What's going on, Lions and Bears family? President George here, back with another episode in the In No Particular Order series. And this is essentially the third part to the first theme, which is purpose. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you. I don't know who we is. I guess it's me and Lions and Bears, but we appreciate you. We love you. And you guys are awesome. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. So this third portion of purpose, it tackles the sub-theme of divine purpose. Last segment, we tackled the question, why don't people find their purpose in life? And we defined it. We defined why people don't find their purpose in life. And really, it was an opportunity for me to share how I found my purpose. But now I do believe that there's another issue or another challenge. Once you find your purpose in life, I think there's two different things. You got the purpose of who you were created to be apart from God. Now, don't get me wrong, God created you. So that's what I believe. So I do believe that it's still a God-given purpose, but the emphasis was talents and gifts. But the idea is once your talents and gifts line up with God, that's where I believe you get a divine purpose. Now, this may be a segment that isn't for everyone, and I don't want to get too preachy, but this is me. And I'm sharing, again, from my perspective. I look forward to getting different perspectives as well in the future. But I do believe that I'm living and I've found my divine purpose where my gifts, talents, and who God has created me to be has lined up with God. And here's the buzzword that I'll give you. When you find this purpose, it protects you. This purpose is the one that has protected me for over 10 years. It's the best feeling in the world. Now, another challenge is how do you get great at this purpose? And that's probably what I'm going to talk about for the next theme in the series, which is training. But let's tackle this very quickly, or as quickly as I can get through my thoughts. I jotted down a couple thoughts here. When it comes to divine purpose, and I jotted down three things here. I've already elaborated on my purpose, who I was created to be, and we left off when I had made the decision to go to college. And yet, when I got to college in LA, I still had this question. I went to the Fashion Institute. I still had this question, what is life all about? I still felt like there was more to life. And in a lot of ways, I was seeking happiness. I wouldn't have said it in the moment, but in retrospect, absolutely. I was looking for happiness. So in a lot of ways, I was looking for God, right? God is the essence of what we want in our hearts, especially if we want happiness, and who doesn't want happiness? And so when I was introduced to God in college, I go, this is it. This is the only thing that I have not sought after. I've gone after everything else in the pursuit of happiness. And so when God was introduced to me, I go, it's worth a shot. I mean, what do I have to lose? And I tell you, it's almost like a purpose within a purpose. When it lined up, I go, this is it. This is everything that I have been looking for. And I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity at the time that I found God, especially in college, in the midst of me maybe possibly attempting to use my purpose in a different space other than for God. So when those two things lined up, I knew that it was everything that I had been missing out on for 19 years. But then the question came, okay, this is this is divine. This from God. I'm definitely meant to have a relationship with God. But now I had to ask myself, how can I be used by God with my gifts and talents, who he created me to be? How can I use these things for him to impact more people? And that was the, if you will, the $1 million question. And I go, well, okay, I think maybe I just started to ask myself, maybe I can entertain, I could be an entertainer. And kind of my head, I go, oh, what if I'm like the Will Smith for God, if you will? And again, this was, please don't judge me, this was over 10 years ago. I think 12 years, 2010, yep, about 12 years ago. And so that's when I told myself, I go, what if I could be the Will Smith for God? And that's kind of, for my first year of Christianity, that's kind of how I viewed myself. I go, I can entertain. I got into music a little bit. Obviously, you guys know I went to the Fashion Institute. So I go, maybe I can be a designer, dabbled in that a bit. And it was great. I think it kept me out of a lot of trouble, but I still felt like there was more that God could be doing with me. And it was about a year after me trying to explore maybe this idea of me going into entertainment. A minister at the time, I was under his tutelage in LA, the Arts, Media, and Sports Ministry. And he goes, shout out to Chris Klopek. He goes, have you ever thought about ministry, man? We see something in you. And by we, other ministers. But it was really his heart that goes, I think your gifts can be best served here. Have you thought about this? And to be honest, I really hadn't. I hadn't really been a thought. It was even challenging at times to connect, because I give a weekly contribution still to this day, even as a minister myself. I give a weekly contribution. And when I finally connected the dots, that my weekly contribution, a portion of it, goes to a minister, I go, oh man, I go, well, hey, we gotta pay somebody. I never really looked at it as something that I could be doing now for the rest of my life. I have to be honest, somebody up there that's loud and sweating and wearing suits, that's not for me. So I hadn't really thought about it. But when he asked me if I would consider it, he also asked me if I would intern part-time for the church. And for me, that was a way to test out whether or not it would be God's will for my life. In other words, is this the purpose? Is this the divine purpose for me? And so I said yes to the internship, and that's kind of how I looked at it, as an internship. Unfortunately, at that time, I go, let me learn and let me attempt to grow. And I wanted to really get the heart of ministry down, to make sure it was linear with my heart, the behind the scenes. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for that opportunity, for Chris and Sonia Klopek, because they really do embody the heart of ministry. So I'm so grateful for that foundation. And really what I learned was, it's not just preaching. A lot of people think it's just preaching and blah, blah. And I think that's a chunk of it, but another big chunk is, as a minister, you serve. You serve. You're attempting to meet needs as best as you can, so that you can help people to make the best spiritual decisions that they possibly can. For lack of better words, there's obviously a lot more to it, so don't quote me directly on that. But when I really started to understand the heart of it, I go, maybe this is something that I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. And then I was asked to lead a small group. So I got my first real leadership position, if you will, with the opportunity to start to influence people, not just individuals in the church, but individuals outside of the church as well. And it was awesome because I knew I had a lot to work on, and there were a lot of things that I needed to grow in. But here's where divine purpose comes in. I believe when you find this, God makes it obvious. God makes it 100% obvious. So I didn't know really what to do at this point. I had no idea how to lead a group, but I had a heart to try. And I knew that I can at least get people excited about God. And that's kind of how I led my small group. And it was awesome. People would come in, they'd have a good time, they'd learn a little more about God in a particular setting. It was more of an open discussion. And I do believe that it was something that, and this is the idea, when you line up with this divine purpose, God blesses it. And so I do believe that it was something that God blessed. And like I've mentioned before, when you tap into this true purpose for you, the feeling that you get from it, the experience that you get from it, there's no way to describe it other than you want it. And this feeling, it will protect you to know that you are doing what you were created to do here on earth. I hope that everybody gets the opportunity to experience something like this here on this planet. And so that was another year for me, just learning practicals of ministry through small groups, pulling people into personalized Bible studies and trying to meet certain needs to certain individuals that have different questions, challenges, faith backgrounds, etc. And I really just fell in love with that process, helping people, wanting to help people, learning how to help people. And it was amazing. But the question still remained, would I do this full time? I was still interning at that time. And on the back end, I was finishing up a couple degrees. And I just got my design degree, and then I went back for business. So this was around the same time I was finishing up my business degree, and another question was asked, and they go, well, you're doing a pretty good job interning, but now do you want to take it to another level? And they had asked me to go into ministry college. And that's where some of my triggers came up, because I'm not really a school person. Let's be honest. I'm just being honest. I'm not a school person. Like, I love to learn. But school for me, it's always, if I'm not passionate about it, it's always been a challenge for myself, even to this day. And so for me, I looked at it this way. I go, I don't know if I'm that passionate about full-time ministry to go to college and study and to train for it. I just had to ask myself that, but before I committed. And I was obviously looking at it in the wrong manner and in the wrong way. But I do think that I had enough of a sample size to know that if I turned it down, then I could miss out on God's purpose for my life. So I said yes. Although in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I just did 6 years of school and I'm going to school again. And this is, again, right on the tail end of me getting my bachelor's in business. Because part of me still, I go, what if I'm meant to be this designer and maybe own this fashion company? Like, in the back of my mind, I go, maybe this is it. Maybe I'm not meant to be the preacher guy, but I'm meant to fuel the dream and to give resources. And because a part of me wanted that degree to pay off. I go, God, you wouldn't call me $60,000 in debt just to go into the ministry and be poor. No, I'm joking. You do not go into the ministry to get rich, though. That is for sure. But my bank account is upstairs. If you know, you know. And so, long story short, I went to ministry college, and for the first half of the experience, it didn't go well because I didn't have the right heart behind it. I think there's a lot of ways to put it, but you got to surrender yourself to God's will and this purpose that He has for you. I was fighting it in a lot of ways, and I think I was making the excuse, well, I'm not a school guy, I'm not a college guy. Because if you're sold on something, God's purpose for you, then you will do anything you have to do to align yourself up with it. And so what really changed for me was God made this completely obvious to me was when my dad started to ask very similar questions that I had started to ask years prior. And he also has a faith background. His background was much stronger than mine was. He was raised essentially around church and in church. But he started to question, okay, is there more to it? Can I grow spiritually? I really appreciate his heart for him asking those questions. And he started to come to me. And it was awesome because we had just started a fellowship in Las Vegas. He was in Las Vegas at the time. Go and check it out for yourself. And you tell me what you think. And he saw it. He saw it for himself, and he goes, this is what I've been missing. He was humble enough to correct some things, which is awesome. And I remember driving up to his baptism to Las Vegas, and there's a couple feelings that I can associate to being highlights, if you will, in my walk. It was definitely when I got baptized. It was my marriage, wedding day, my two sons being born, and I think one of the highlights was my dad. So I'll never forget that trip going up to, I was in LA obviously at the time, so going up to Las Vegas, and I go, man, this is what it's all about. I knew that in a lot of ways someone else was finding their purpose in life, and because it was my dad, it was a little more special. But I go, this is what I want to be a part of. This is the feeling that I want to be a part of. Then I had to ask myself, man, what do you call these people that have this kind of impact? And then it just hit me, ton of bricks, a minister, a preacher. I go, you call this guy a preacher? And I'm like, oh my God, you set me up. I mean, he didn't set me up. I mean, he did set me up, but he didn't set me up from a negative standpoint. He lined me up with his will and with his purpose. But then it hit me as I look back and go, everything that I've done, this was 2012, 2013, I was maybe 2021, I don't know, I was still a little younger. And I go, everything I've done up until that point is really pointed to this one moment of me making this decision to line myself up with who I am and God's divine purpose for my life. And that was subconsciously in my heart, I go, that's the title. It's the title, and in my heart that I'm giving myself. And this is it. This is my divine purpose for my life. I am going to be a minister. And when I tell you, this purpose has protected me up until this point, and there's been so much fruit, so much impact that my life has had. Not me, it has nothing to do with me. It just has everything to do with me and my life lining up with God's purpose that He has had for me. And I don't want to give too much away because it's going to play into some of the next themes. Obviously, the next one is training. And now I want to talk about when you find this purpose, this God-given purpose, and how challenges, hardships, opportunities prepare you and train you to get better at your purpose in life. I think it's going to be an interesting time. I appreciate you guys again tuning in to this one, the first theme topic of the series in no particular order. I broke it up into 3 episodes, sound bites, a little better, a little easier for you guys, and I appreciate you guys. A lot of love. See you guys soon.